Hey, this is Carl here again, also known as Zarepath in the Custom Magic community. I'm here to talk about Ruins of Doharum, another set that is up for nomination for Custom Standard, a custom constructed format. There's a rotation coming up. The vote is this Friday, and there are 10 sets up for nomination, one of which is Ruins of Doharum by Passthechips. This has been a set that's been in design and development for a long time, not as long as Metropolis has been, but uh, been around for a while and has some of my favorite mechanics. And passthechips is a great designer, so I've always been pretty high on this set. It's been up for rotation before. I was disappointed when it didn't make it in before. This time I'd rather see Metropolis make it, but there are a lot of exciting things in the set that I'm going to talk about as we go through the set now. So Seal is one of the mechanics I really like. It is a little bit like Morph for spells, except it's just a 2-mana artifact. So you can cast this thing like normal, or you can cast it as a relic artifact for 2 mana. And then you can later cast it at instant speed. So it's kind of like a slow reflex from Laredo, something that allows you to cast at an instant speed at a different cost. This is rare, so it's not just like a kicker thing. It has a strange, different alternative cost. I don't particularly like this design for Seal. It's like, oh, I won the game. Oh, never mind, I didn't, and I'll never be able to win the game because I don't have ways to remove all your creatures. I know this is like a weaker worship, but I don't think worship is good design. So that's my issue with that design. But I love the idea of there being a critical mass of constructed playable seal cards to the point where if I'm playing against a control deck, they might have sealed an individual removal spell or a counter spell, or they might have sealed a sweeper, and it's difficult to know how to play into it. And you can try and make reads on your opponent based off of their sequencing or other plays they've made that introduces some really interesting mind game space to Custard that isn't necessarily there right now. Uh, so I see a lot of potential in Constructed for Seal, and I'm very high on it. One criticism of the set is that it's perhaps overly complex at common, like there's no vanilla commons. A lot of the cards seem focused a lot more on synergy, which is an issue that Metropolis has had in the past, which is hopefully not as much of a problem now. But like this could just be a simple tap creatures design, but you also gain life for each tapped creature on the battlefield, which just makes it feel a little different. I think that's to encourage you more to want to do it at instant speed. Uh, Actually, no, that doesn't. No, never mind. That doesn't make a difference whether you cast this at instant or sorcery speed. It's just a life gain mixed with tapping, which is okay, but I think since Seal is already complex enough, if it were me, I'd probably just try and simplify it. There's also structures, which we'll get to later, but there's structure synergies, which I don't know that structures necessarily need to have synergy designs built up around them. I think it would be cleaner to just let the structures play, the mechanic play by itself. Um, I like this design. It's just a big, appealing, Timmy horror. I enjoy it. Okay, runic mana. I love the new symbols for this. And it can be paid by either tapping an artifact, so like improvise from Ether Revolt, except it's not a cost reduction thing, it's often just for an activated ability, or by paying a mana from an artifact. So generally that just means one artifact equals one runic mana, but sometimes you have artifacts that can tap for more than one, and then, there you go. Uh, this lets you bounce things, and it's a 3/1 for 2. I could see this maybe seeing playing constructed if there's artifact synergies. Alright, big sweeper, non-artifact, non-land permanents. This would see play particularly as a replacement for Nahiri's Vengeance against the Blight spawning deck, although I don't know if Blight spawning is getting a change. Blight hatching, I forget what it's called. Okay, so when you play this, you can put a counter on something, make it weaker, and then it can't attack or block. I like this maybe out of a sideboard. It's hard to play this proactively against slower strategies that, with Garrick's and Varseek's or blue-white controlled type decks, but very good against other creature decks. It's a lot of math for a comment on that. Runic Mana Tapper, that's just limited though. Wow, this exact design exists in Erelu, except it's for each creature. Oh wait, no, it's not exact. It's different. In Erelu, the enchanted creature gets +2/+2, and other creatures get +1/+1. So it's a very different design. This just has persist, which is fine. Unkeyworded persist plays well. Alright, Nahiri, Planeswalker. You can give something else indestructible, so it can help protect itself. We can make a Hedron Vault and exile. Okay. Oh, that's really cute. So we've had this card in Custom Standard for a while, Gift of the Dohar, ever since Villains, and it's a 3 mana, this thing, Hedron Vault. It's an artifact, Oblivion Ring. And this creates that, and it also fits flavor-wise, because it's Gift of the Dohar, it's from Doharum. Yeah, I really like this design. I could see this playing well. Just a solid Planeswalker design. And I like the callback to Gift of the Dohar, considering Gift of the Dohar is rotating out. This rotating backhand would feel kind of nice. When it deals combat damage, you can put a creature card with power 2 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. I think this really needs to be CMC 2 or less instead of power 2 or less. There's probably too many ways to abuse it. Anything that has like the static asterisks as its power and toughness can be launched with this, or things that enter with a bunch of counters on them. I think it's just too easy to abuse this. It would just feel stupid and unintuitive. Okay. If this was sealed, yeah, this goes with my earlier critique about structures, even though we haven't gotten to any structures yet. We might end up seeing those all at the end of the review just because they're going to be at the bottom because they're artifacts. But I feel like you just want Seal to shine on its own, and I don't think you need to add the unnecessary synergy of if this was sealed, then you also get this bonus, at least at common. I think you want the first line of text to read as simply as possible, because the seal reminder text, even though it's been simplified quite a bit, there's a lot of numbers involved. Like normally this costs 4, but instead you can seal for 3 and a white, which actually means you pay 2, and then later at instant speed you can pay 3 and a white to cast it. There's just a lot going through your mind just to consider how to play the card. Having the effect be a little complicated and modal, I think bogs that down. Nice. Huh. Probably doesn't get there in constructed. Maybe. Maybe if there was an artifact deck that was okay with playing this for 2 mana, and then later again for 4. I don't know. Okay, here's something pushed. So this is meant for a mono white runic mana deck. This set is also missing flavor text bars. Yeah, I like this design. If you have artifact support, you can. It's kind of like crewing it, right? Except you're tapping your artifacts to help your creatures instead of vice versa. So that's kind of fun. I would love to try and build a runic mana deck, and I feel like the tools for it exist in the set, and I appreciate that. Could this get there? I don't know. It helps you go wide. Yeah, power 2 or less is a big thing. I guess that's why... I feel like anytime you're cheating a creature, uh, it needs to be CMC. But power 2 or less, I just remembered as a sub-theme, I think, in green and white, which is why that design is the way it is. I'm not going to go all the way back to it. But the one where you can cheat it into play when it deals combat damage. So I guess I'm sympathetic. I'm more sympathetic to it, even though I still think it's too strong. It's just the wrong way to design that effect. Effects like this where you're putting it into your hand, that's probably okay. There's a weird marriage of effects though, like when you cast an artifact spell, a marriage of synergies. Like you want to care about artifacts and creatures with power 2 or less, but you also need to run this enchantment. Okay, here we go. Rare structure. So it's like an artifact that can be attacked, like a planeswalker. It doesn't have loyalty abilities that crank up the value that's being attacked, but you can pay mana to secure it, which just you put more counters on it, basically. Oof, I don't know that I like humility as an effect either. It seems like some of these white rares are pulling back early to Magic's history to effects that are splashy, but are ultimately problematic and probably wouldn't be reprinted today. I just know there's tons of crazy rules complications with humility, and I don't know. Well, actually, I think humility is worded differently. I don't think it says base power and toughness, so maybe the templating has fixed that. I don't know. Humility also says base power and toughness. It doesn't say they lose all abilities. Particularly since it grants abilities. And missing a period there. I guess this could see play. It's hard for me to evaluate. But I really love the idea of structures just representing a different axis for players to care about in Constructed. So structures and seal I'm pretty high on, and I just mentioned I would love building around a runic mana. -1/-1 counters as a sub-theme. I don't know how much that appears in Constructed. So at sorcery speed you can draw 3 then discard for 4, so that's Sift. Or you can pay 2, cast at instant speed, then draw 3 cards. Yikes, that's good, right? I mean, you have to pay 2 mana and then 4 mana later, so you're paying 6 mana for 3 cards, but it's split over 2 turns. I don't know. Could this see play? Maybe. Huh. This can boost the loyalty of your planeswalkers, or +1/+1 counters on your creatures, things like that, or in your structures. So 2/1 flyer for 2 is fine. Structure synergy, but I don't think the tempo deck wants structures in it. I think the spell costing less to cast, I think that cost reduction also affects the seal cost. Huh. This is like a splashy weird design. I don't know if it's the right design for seal. Because why would this be better to cast at instant speed on your opponent's turn? I'm not sure. Like, I guess if you get in the counter war on their turn, you get 3 spells cast. Like, I can understand why the design is mythic, but I'm not positive why the design has to be seal. I do appreciate it as something that your opponent may want to play around, like, oh, is this the board wipe? Is this a removal spell? Why are they casting so many spells? Uh-oh, like, have I played into, into Awaken the Nameless? And this is a design I really enjoy for the same reason. Bury the Past. Yeah, just a great... You can play around it, like Settle the Wreckage, or you can not and get blown out. So you really, I could see this seeing play. You really want other seal cards that would see play in the same deck, and maybe it's the draw spell. Like, are they going to draw 3 cards, or are they going to return all my crap to my hand? This seems like an okay design. Okay, 5-mana instant pile card, like Wander, or Make Way Through Petals, or whatever it's called in Heirloom. Okay, reveal the top 5 cards. You choose a revealed card that hasn't been chosen. An opponent chooses a revealed card that hasn't been chosen. Repeat this process till all revealed cards are chosen. Then return all cards you chose to your hand and exile the rest. So you get the first pick of 5 and the third pick and the 5th pick. So you get 3 cards, but you don't get the second best card or 4th best card unless your opponent is misevaluating. Then you might get the first and the second best cards out of 5. It's unlikely you'd also get the third. I bet this is kind of fun to resolve. I bet it takes a while, which, isn't always great. But I don't think this resolves more than twice a game, right? So that's probably okay. I like this card a lot. I was just thinking I wish I had a design kind of like this, like a bigger control stabilizer card. Not stabilize, but getting the cards that you want. Paying a lot of mana for a lot of card advantage. I wish I had something like that in Metropolis. It seems just like a really appealing design, and it's nice and spiky like Soul Confluence. Okay, Hidden Knowledge. That would see play. Maybe. I don't know, we already have that effect, but it's not really seeing play yet. But Strategic Planning is going to be leaving, and this would be, maybe a replacement for decks that care about that. Alright, Leyline Nexus. Okay, lets you cast things from outside the game. So maybe this would also go with the blue board wipe as a potential seal blowout. It lets you cast counter spells from your sideboard. That's pretty cool. I like this design a lot. Actually, I really like this design the more I think about it. I've always loved the idea of the sideboard becoming a toolbox, because that changes how sideboards are traditionally used as things for specific matchups. But if your main game plan includes playing things from your sideboard, then it just makes deck building a lot more interesting to me. So I enjoy that a lot. Library of Teltor. Structure fewer cards in hand than its stability. Draw cards equal to the difference. One thing that I know Ruben has talked about is why not remove the secure ability from all of the structures and keep it simple. There's not a whole mechanic in addition to the new mechanic of structures. I've always considered secure as just baked into structures and how they play. Planeswalkers naturally you have ways of building up loyalty, like a way to respond to being attacked. It makes sense that structures have a way you can build them back up if damage is dealt to them or something. However, I kind of understand the point, like if structures can be more simplified, that helps the complexity of the set a lot, which is likely over complex, particularly at common. However, the rare designs all care about the level of stability in very interesting ways and reward you building it up, and it feels like you're really building a structure, like something cool. And I think Library of Teltor is a great design of that. You can pay. You pay this, play this in turn 4, and you don't get any cards from it. But then turn 5, maybe you secure it up to 5, and you end up drawing a card at the end of your turn. Turn 6, you play some cards, secure it again, it goes up to 7, and you draw like 2 or 3 more cards. Like, I could just see this, you grinding out a ton of card advantage as you get higher and higher. And I love the threshold bonus of 8 or more stability, because that puts pressure on your opponent to interact with it in a similar way that planeswalkers can build up to something and create mounting pressure on a game and create a narrative for a game, of, oh, I needed to keep him off the ultimate, or once he ultimates, the game is going to change drastically in his favor, and so I have to do something about this. I need to play with it more personally, but I feel like designs like this really show the strength of Secure. Wow. You can cast an instant or sorcery card in graveyard without paying its mana cost. Holy smokes. I mean, I feel like you've got to be able to build around this and construct it, right? I was about to say this seal design feels very similar to the one that lets you cast things from the sideboard, but it's very different. This feels a lot more combo-y, because you're casting something for free. I feel like there's enough seal tools in blue that it can hit a critical threshold that makes your opponent not be sure what you're going to do with your mana. I appreciate that the seal cost here is the same as for the board wipe. So it's like, are they going to wipe me for attacking, or are they going to cast this thing in their graveyard? And I like that if an opponent knows that this card exists, they can play around it by at least knowing what cards are in your graveyard, so they know what your options are. This card is just weird to think about. I don't understand it. I guess it works with runic mana. I don't know. Okay, so this is a runic mana control finisher. Seems fine. And I guess if you, the fun thing about runic mana is that the seals of these spells, or they're called relics, can be tapped for the runic mana. And so in the control deck that has these seal cards that ask your opponent to play around without knowing what the correct card is, it also helps support them finish the game with something like Runestone Shift. I see a lot of nice cards for blue-based control. Runic Barrier can be good if you have a structure, but like that Library of Teltor design that I liked so much, I still don't think that makes it into like a tier 1 or 2 constructed deck, because it's just, you're paying 4 mana for something that can be attacked and killed, and likely not getting any cards from it for a couple turns, and you kind of have to pay even more mana into it for that to be good. I'd be surprised if structures were too good. Let me put it that way. I love how they're interactable in the subgames they create, but I would be surprised if any of them were too strong. Even the pushed and splashy ones. Oh, this is interesting. I think it's more for limited, but sorry for the yawning. Oh, it's a little bit late here, but to stick to my schedule, I needed to do one more review today. So I'm a little bit tired, but still very excited by the set. Whoa. I like this design. This is really splashy. I don't think it's necessarily good, but it sounds fun. You exile all of any number of permanents, and then you can find anything in your deck that adds up to the same converted mana cost and put them. onto the battlefield. So you just kind of mutate your board into something else. Huh. I guess you have a lot of things with really big ETBs, and that's where most of their value is from. And then you can reshape them into more board affecting permanents. But I mean, this likely doesn't see play in Custard, but I really like the design. I really love the design of Stasis Chamber, even though it's more of a limited card. I think it's a great application of Seal. Time Lost Ascetic. This would be in, I guess, the Runic Tempo deck. So not the same deck as the Control Finisher, but you basically can upgrade it by tapping your artifacts. Although this is also kind of a finisher because he ends up having flying hexproof and the ability to get card advantage. So I don't know. Oh, yeah, I don't think this gets there. This doesn't, returning 2 creatures. I don't know if that's common, but that's okay. And this is kind of fun. You can just tap 3 artifacts instead of casting this, but you still have to have an island. Which makes me wonder, Unsealed Horrors plus Time Lost Ascetic and some like something that makes lots of artifact tokens. I know Metropolis has lots of ways to do that, and Erelu does. I just think that's kind of fun. Okay, you can turn all your artifacts into golems. Seems fine. Alright, let's move on to black. Oh, this is an Aristocrats type card. 1 drop. Sacrifice other creatures. Temporary bonus. Didn't I see this almost exact same design in the last set I did? Huh. Yeah, you can distribute counters. Yeah, that's... Like, I really like this... well... I think this could be even simpler. Like, ideally it puts it all in 1 creature. But... I appreciate it. Oh, Warband. That's another mechanic here. It's returning from Laredo, but Shadow Centaur got it from Pass the Chips and Doharum to put it into Laredo. So this is actually the original version of Warband. It's just Soul Bond, but only on attacking. And they both gain Menace. I mean, this isn't seen play, I was just mentioning it. Oh. For the sake of talking about the mechanic. Okay. You can tap your artifacts to draw cards and lose life. That's pretty good. Seems like a good design. It might see play depending on if Runic Mana gets there, and that depends on if there's an artifact deck. It's weird that there's 2 rare black 5 CMC creatures. Oh, anything it kills or its companion it attacked with. Anytime those die, you can return to the battlefield. I like this warband design a lot. I wish the body wasn't so unattractive, but the effect is so strong, I guess that makes sense. Oh, wow. This is another brutal seal spell. I feel like he has put a lot of thought into how these would play in Constructed and how you want the critical mass of effects, and you want your opponent trying to figure out how to play around which effect you have. I think they've done what I hoped that they had as far as Seal goes. You can, huh? Is there a grindy deck that keeps casting Looming Shadows by tapping artifacts? I don't know, but I like the design. I'm a sucker for recursive designs as a player. I just like doing the same thing over and over again times like 100, just abusing the crap out of it. It's just very fun for me. As a designer, I understand that's not good for a game, but oh, so this is fun. This is Thoughtseize, except you don't lose 2 life, except it costs 2 mana. But if you don't find something you want to discard, you can draw a card instead. I really like this design. You can main deck this, and you know, if they don't have stuff you particularly want to spend 2 mana to get rid of, maybe you want to spend 2 mana to draw something else. It kind of fixes the issue of targeted discard just feeling so swingy. Of either you get the thing you want, or maybe there's not even a good target there. If a non-token permanent you control left the battlefield, create 2 insects. Huh. Maybe this fits Saru's spot in these aristocrats decks. It encourages you to sacrifice things and you get insects back. This could definitely see play in aristocrats, I think. Okay, so the other of the 2 planeswalkers, you can put counters on creatures. When either of them die, you can draw a card. It feels a little weak, and it's obviously situational upon creatures being on the board, so it's also matchup dependent. I don't really see this seeing play. Oh, okay. So I guess blue and black have these big mythic seal spells where there's cost reduction either on the number of spells you've cast that have been cast this turn or creatures that have died. Oh my gosh. You can cast a card without paying its mana cost from their library. I like this design a lot. This is big and splashy and exciting, and I think it being a surprise. So this is, I had this critique of, why was the Nameless Horror design, why does it have seal? And I think the real reason why, well, I was going to say because you can reduce its cost by paying it for 2, paying 2 to play it earlier, and then later it's cheaper, but that's not really the case. It's still the same cost. The trick is doing it instant speed. It's just gaining instant speed. And I don't know how important that was for the Nameless Horror card. Here, I could see that being big. You don't know if your opponent is going to trade everything with you on your turn. But if they do it on their turn, you can punish them for it. I like that design a lot. That's pretty good. Draining them on an artifact ETB, that's quite strong. Like, I wonder if there's a way to really abuse the crap out of that. I know I have a card, Liberated Armory in Metropolis, that arms creatures when they enter play. So anytime you play a creature, you're draining them, which I guess isn't that strong now that I think about it. Scarlet Monstrosity, this is the same stats as the White Horror. That's interesting. I like recurring stuff from the graveyard. This requires you to cast sealed spells, which I'm willing to do because I like sealed, but that also means that this is kind of an insular design. Oh, making them sacrifice 2 creatures. I like this design. Yeah, I could see this seeing play, perhaps. Exile a creature, and then create a token that's a copy of it. Wow. I mean, this is just straight up good without the seal mode. Well, I guess you don't get haste from the creature, but that can still be really good if it has a good ETB. which you normally feel bad removing creatures with good ETBs, and this makes that you don't feel so bad because you get the ETB now. What this really wants you to do is have them attack, and then you cast this at instant speed. You exile one of their attacking creatures, you get a copy of it, and then you wipe out their other thing. I like this card. This seems fine. Seems okay. Maybe it doesn't see playing. Constructed. Okay, here's the black one. Cast a creature card from a graveyard. Oh, a definite card advantage from this. Yeah, I like this design. This seems to have more immediate impact than the Library of Teltor. Although maybe the Library of Teltor goes in more of a tempo deck where you're playing out the cards in your hand, so you're only sitting at 1 or 2 cards in hand when you cast it, and therefore you're definitely getting cards each turn. I don't know. Okay, Reanimator, being able to do that at instant speed. I can see how that's a good seal design. I think it's a little too expensive to compete with the other reanimation spells in the format. Okay, red. Warband. I think that's a weird design. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it can do damage to a creature instead. And so what does that mean? They're just always going to block. They're never going to let it go through, because the creature's going to get the damage one way or the other. So it doesn't actually do much except force an opponent's decision, which I dislike. Okay. Double damage, that seems fine. 5 mana is a little expensive for constructed, but I like the design okay. Not everything has to see play and everything. Like, you know, the mythic dragons. Any mythic dragon without haste likely isn't going to see play. Okay. Ritual. I like rituals. I always worry about Custard having too many of them. We already have one that ramps to 3. Cast this for 2 on turn 2. And on turn 3, you suddenly have 5 mana. I'd be interested to see how this could be abused, or if it could be. Because the problem is that this effect usually isn't worth it unless it's doing something absolutely bonkers. I like this card, except for the runic mana requirement. Like, I just dislike this won't do anything unless you have artifacts. A lot of the exciting cards here, you absolutely have to either have lots of seal cards, or you have to be in an artifact-based strategy. The structures can kind of stand on their own, but structures kind of have a build-around feel to them anyway. Because you have to be able to protect them, you have to be able to meet the conditions that make the structures worth having. But I like this design a lot. You can pay 3 runic mana to get 3 cards that you can play, and then sacrifice this and get 5 red mana, and then play the cards that you did. So I just think it's an interesting card. And if you want to keep it around, you can just do it twice a turn and play those cards. Instant speed active treason with, you know, a hefty seal cost seems appropriate, more of a limited thing than constructed. A pseudo shock. Okay, runestone crucible. You can copy artifacts, and then you get to keep it forever if the stability is back up to 6. Oh, So this lets you turn all your artifacts into pingers. When it enters the battlefield, all your artifacts can ping anything you want. I could see that being interesting in some kind of artifact deck. Pardon. Oh, okay, this is really good. I'm beginning to wonder if this being a sweeper at red, a seal sleeper, and then blue having, it's not a true sweeper, it returns it to their hand, and then black having a somewhat of a sweeper, like it puts counters on everything, and then anything that gets damaged that has a counter is going to die, and I think you gain control of it or something. Maybe I'm mistaking that with another design. If all of the colors have access to a sweeping seal spell, then it's not as interesting to try and play around it. Like normally you could be like, okay, what kind of seal spell is this going to be? Oh, well, I know that they aren't red, so it's not going to be the sweep effect. Or I know that they aren't blue, so I know it's not going to be the bounce. The fact that those spells accomplish similar goals maybe makes me worry that there's too much redundancy there. Like, you really want the seal designs to be doing different enough things that it affects your opponent's decisions and really makes them try and guess what you have. And I guess some opponents are going to be more okay with having things return to their hand than 3 damage dealt to each creature. So like maybe they, if they think you're on unstable power as opposed to the bounce, maybe they'll attack with, well, I guess it doesn't matter what they attack with because you could just deal the damage no matter what. It's not to attacking creatures, it's just to each creature. I really like this design and I like the other design. So this is more just developmental thoughts of what would both of those being in the format do. I think this is a really good design. Warband, mixed with Exile Draw. The problem with these, a lot of triggers that require you to deal damage to the opponent, is that they feel very swingy, and often it being on one creature, just as long as they have any creature, they can prevent it. But I like it being paired with Warband because then the triggers feel a lot more likely to happen. Like if either creature can deal combat damage, you feel like your chances have doubled. And that makes the triggers a lot more appealing, and I think the Warband designs are done pretty well. Okay, we're in green. Alright, this lets you ramp up a bunch of mana for one turn. It's like a delayed ritual. This, yeah, it's not a true mana dork. You have to have artifacts to be able to do it. And you need mana for artifacts, so I guess you could seal something on turn 2, and then this becomes ramp on turn 3, and fixing, but then it's not that great. This is a nice safety valve. Grandeur of the Dohar. Oh, that could be pretty big. If you have a really big thing already, you can find lots of other things. So definitely win more. Oh, Hive's Beckon is big. Create an insect creature token for each permanent that left the battlefield this turn. So if you're sacrificing a bunch of stuff for that other black insect card, you can then refuel with this. I would love to see this. I don't know if I'd love to see it, but I would definitely see this in Aristocrats decks. That would definitely be a tool. Okay. I like this design. It's probably too slow and dirtly for constructed, but I like and appreciate it as a structured design. And Lost Secrets similarly. Whoa. This is a fun design monument crawler. 7 mana, 7/8 that can turn into an artifact whenever you want. And it also makes nomads. I like it. Nerim Gargantuan, something you can cheat out by if you sacrifice 3 permanents. This only costs 2 green mana for a 6/6 trample. Is that worth the rate? I don't know. But I like it. I like how it fits well with the other sacrificing themes of the insect cards we've seen. I just like this set more the more I look at it. I know I mentioned a lot of things about complexity and maybe some designs not being ideal, but I just like a lot of things about the set. This is really fun. You can, find a creature CMC X or less, but you can also cast it, as a seal card and then sacrifice a creature to replace it with something else, which is a lot like the blue card we were talking about, Reshape Reality. It's a similar kind of thing. Maybe that shares too much space, I don't know, but I really like this seal design for green. I wasn't expecting green to have a lot of really compelling seal designs. I'm glad it has this splashy one, which seems to be well costed and designed. Okay, this is a doubler with runic mana. I don't know if that gets there, but it's a build around. This is pseudo ramp on a body. Things that cost 6 or more suddenly cost 2 less to cast. Oh, Seal Fog. This is a card you only cast with its seal cost. Alright, on to multicolor and artifacts. This gives your artifacts hexproof, and it's a structures matter thing. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't like this design. I don't like the card disadvantage of it. I want to be rewarded with runic mana, not have the option to maybe make a mistake by discarding cards to avoid costs. Like, this already costs 5 mana, so cheating to cast another spell, that spell had better be really expensive. And there's already a spell in the set that lets you cast a more expensive spell from the graveyard, and so I don't see the appeal of this. I liked the previous design a lot more. I had a whole ECH deck built around it. I think there were power level concerns, perhaps, but this is not as appealing to me. Whoa, what? Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Oh man, I have that effect on a 4 mana 3/3 artifact creature flyer in Metropolis. It's a rare. I guess it's different because it comes with its own trigger when you play it, and it also has evasion. But this is, my testing of that card used to be a 4/3 flying first strike, and I realized that was bonkers and nerfed it down. If that's any indication, this is probably has the potential to be quite strong. I like this design a lot. I considered making a ECH deck around him. Yeah, I just think that's fun. A fun way to do pairing and to have dragons. I like this as a Power Tour Less Matters card. Whenever you cast a spell, make a dwarf, tap dwarfs to find dwarfs or artifacts. I don't like the random dwarf tribal. I guess it fits the flavor, and that's fine. It just seems like kind of an awkward mythic to me. Anytime you cast a spell, you get a dwarf, though. I mean, that's really good. That's going to be most of the power is in just that first line. I really like Marad, Truth Seeker. 3 mana, 2/3 hexproof. Pay 2 and sacrifice a creature artifact to be able to cast something from your graveyard. I just like that mix of card advantage and resource use, using your creatures as resources. It being a interesting engine card. I would want to try and build a deck around this, I think. Five mana for 3 flyers. I think this would be like a great Jund card. I mean, it's a 3 for 1. And, often you can sacrifice your insects to remove other problematic creatures. Yeah, this is a strong card. I think it's a card that black-green could use in Custard. They just don't have a lot of great ways to put pressure on opponents with their very strong cards. Like, they have lots of great ways of grinding out value, and they have good planeswalkers. But I like something like this, which is an immediate threat and also, immediate card advantage, or at least board advantage. This is 4 mana for 3 creatures. Let's see play. This is definitely going to see play if there's a red-black aggro deck. I mean, there's a reason to make a red-black aggro deck. It's a 3/2 haste that gives something else +1/+0 if you're curving out correctly. I don't think that gets there. This is kind of an interesting card. You find something that's really big, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then you get to draw a card. So this is a draw 2, but one of the cards you find has to be really expensive. I could see this being in a, I was going to say blue-green control deck, but how many control decks want things that cost 6 or more? Maybe this is more of a mid-range card. I mean, if you run 4 of these, you're probably going to want 4 things with CMC 6 or more. Maybe they're things that have cost reduction mechanics on them. So like those seal cards that, maybe they cost a lot of mana, but there's situations where they'll actually be really cheap and easy to cast. I don't know, that's strange. I bet this could be a tool in some kind of deck. I bet something could abuse this, and it's an interesting challenge. Choose any target, untap. Oh, this is a weird card. You untap stuff to deal damage instead of tapping it. So it wants you to tap your artifacts for runic mana, and then you get a bonus with your real mana to untap those things and zap stuff. Yeah, probably not constructed. Well, can you untap things that are already untapped? Like, if I have 10 creatures and or artifacts, can I just cast this and deal 20 damage, regardless of whether they're tapped or not? Or they have to have been untapped in this way for it to count. I don't know. 2/3 for 2. That's always something to look at. Structures cost 1 less to cast. I find it weird that there's a pushed synergy for structures. I think structures should stand on their own. And return this from your graveyard to your hand. Seems to be a fair amount of graveyard recursion in here. Wasn't there something else that returns from graveyard to play whenever you cast a sealed spell? That was a big black rare card. This just comes back to your hand whenever an artifact enters play. That seems cool. Aetherforge, this is Birthing Pod for spells. This is a interesting build around. but you have to cast the original spell and then pay 2 to turn it into something else, which actually may not be that good. Creatures you can have played on a different turn and get some value from an ETB or something. This, you're effectively countering your own spells and making them cost more to find a more specific spell in your deck. There's these uncommon and rare artifacts that care about the color you use to cast it, and they have interesting effects that go with them. You can look at the top card of your library, you can exile the top card of your library, you can sacrifice this to draw a card. This is really interesting card selection. I'd be interested to see how that plays. Coiling Matrix, we're all a little worried about. And whenever it becomes tapped, you get to put a bunch of cards in your hand. If the top card's a land, you at least get a land. If it's a couple cards and then a land, you've drawn 3 cards just for tapping this. And so anything with runic mana, and this, you're getting tons of card advantage. I haven't built a deck and tested it, but I'm a little worried about it. Cryptic Orrery. A lot of different options here. Pay 3 to gain 2 life, or to loot, or make them lose life. You don't have to tap to do it, so this works with runic mana well. Some of these uncommon structures have colored secure costs, so you can play them like a normal artifact in any deck, but they get better with certain colors available to you. This costs 3 mana, but it ramps you 2, which is especially good if you're doing runic mana, because then you can also tap this. You can basically get 3 runic mana. That might see play in some kind of ramp shell, because ramping 2 mana for 3 mana is a good rate for that. So if you cast this for 6 white mana, then you get 6 flying spirits and a 3/3 flyer. That is appealing. I like these as monocolor payoffs to help with Rakoa's monocolor stuff, monocolor seeds. Okay, costs 8 mana. You can exile it in your library, shuffle your hand, engrave it into your library, and draw 3 cards. Your life total becomes 20. Wow. That's a heck of a card. So the real bonus is you get to draw 3 cards and go back to 20 life, and only if there's nothing else worthwhile in your hand. I like the flavor text of that. Fossilized Colossus, you can get 4 cards from your graveyard when you play it if you're mono green. Oh wow. You can find a couple spells if you cast this for mono blue. Even just 4 blue mana and 2 of anything else, you can get a couple instant sorcery spells you can cast. A lot of value in these monocolor artifacts, which I think is a fine way to push. This is a weird card. I guess the idea is you exchange runic mana for normal mana, and that's all it does. Make him sacrifice permanents. I don't think this one is as good because them being able to choose what they sacrifice. Oftentimes they're just sacrificing the 1 or 2 extra lands they don't need and a token. Nullifying orb. Activated abilities of non-land cards can't be activated. I could see this costing 2 or 3, to be honest. I think 4 is a little too expensive. Pillar of Binding. You get... Whoa. You pay 6 mana for a 10/10 with Indestructible. But if Pillar of Binding gets removed, then it gets exiled. Huh. But it's hard for them to attack Pillar of Binding if you have a 10/10 Indestructible. But then if you're holding that back up to block, you're not really getting great use out of it either. Interesting design. This is Runestone Tower is interesting as an anthem that can be attacked. It's unique, and I'm excited to see what kind of gameplay patterns that creates. I'm starting to feel myself shutting down. I'm gonna have to finish this. I know there's at least one more structure I'm really excited about. They can't untap. Ooh, I hate that. When I was talking about pulling designs from earlier in Magic, this is one of those things. I don't think limiting how much people can untap is going to be a net fun. I don't like that design. Oh, 3 mana 5/5, but it gets smaller as you go. Oh, Time Worn Foundry. You keep making golems to protect it. It's kind of like Hogger in Hearthstone, actually. But then you can make your golems bigger by securing the foundry. I don't think this gets there in Constructed, but it's interesting design. Oh. This lets you ramp from your graveyard, kind of similar to redistricting, although redistricting is different. So this in mono black control. It's got Death Touch, it's good body, 3/3, and then you can make him discard 2 cards and lose 4 life. I love this as a monocolor payoff. Oh, I guess the design I was thinking they had an Oblivion Ring as a structure, but I guess they decided that that was too much color bleeding from white, which I guess is fair. And then the land cycle is these monocolored legendary lands that, you know, benefit from Runic mana, which is only going to see play in those Runic mana decks, probably. Anyway, that has been Runes of Doharum. I really love implications of basically all the mechanics for Constructed. I've wanted to see this in Custard for a while. I think it would lead to some really interesting play potentially. It can be a bit parasitic, particularly with artifact synergies, but I'm one to talk with Metropolis. Some complexity issues and some design decisions and individual designs that, you know, maybe aren't correct, but I know that passthechips is still, you know, always open to iterating. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Got 2 left. Tomorrow I'm gonna do Scriptures of Urshad and Festoon, and then maybe another video where I talk about how I'm likely to vote. But thank you for watching. Hope this was informative and helpful for you.